All right, so we're going to be working on a grouped mean and grouped standard deviation example here. So notice in front of you right now, you have a frequency distribution given from Pearson. The difficulty in trying to find the mean and standard deviation is that our data has already been summarized. For instance, I don't know what the exact values of those 336 observations in the first class are. So let's discuss how we can actually get an approximation for the mean and standard deviation. Now, in order to approximate your mean in this problem, what you need to do is the following. So first off, have your frequency distribution up. Now, looking at your frequency distribution, notice that I can't just calculate a mean. Normally what you do is you'd add together all of your samples or all of your observations, and then you divide by the total number of observations. In this case, if I look at, say, the category from 1,000 to 1,199, I have 7 different observations that fall between those two numbers, but I have no idea where those 7 are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, we're going to count all 7 of those as the middle. We're just going to count them as 1,100. Now, let's actually get to the formula. The formula here is going to be in green. It's the sum of these xi times fi's divided by the sum of all my fi's. Now, what do all these mean? Xi is my class midpoint, meaning the middle number, and Fi is my frequency, meaning how many were in that category or in that class. Notice that this is just an approximation. We can't actually say that the mean equals this because, yet again, we don't know where those 7 numbers actually lie in 1,000 to 1,199. And same with all my other categories. Now, ultimately, in order to figure something like this out, what you need to be able to do is to get what your xi's are and your fi's. Xi stands for class midpoint. So I went ahead and provided 2 examples right here and right here. For the class of 0 to 199, the midpoint of those numbers is 100. So my Xi is 100. The frequency associated to that class is 336. Going on to the next one, 200 to 399. Notice that my midpoint is 300, the middle number between 200 and 399. My frequency, on the other hand, is 98. Now I'll be moving over to Excel in the next video to show you how this looks like in an actual calculation. Now, as you can see, I went ahead and thrown in all of our numbers right here. So that's where we should be looking. Now remember our formula. So I'm going to be working within those 2 black bars. I'm going to write my formula over here. My formula for the mean was the sum, meaning adding all things together that look like xi times fi divided by the sum of all things that look like fi. So the very first thing I'm going to say is, wait a second, because of the bottom, because of this right here, I need to add up all things that look like fi. So I go to equals sum, open parenthesis, and hey, I'm adding all of these guys together, all my frequencies. Boom, 522. Now because of this right here, xi times fi, I need to figure out what those look like. So I'll do equals 100, click on the cell, times 336. Boom, there's 33,600. I multiply all of my midpoints by their associated frequencies, and I get all of these numbers. Each of these numbers is a thing that looks like xi times fi. Now this thing right here tells me to add up all such things. So I say equals sum, because I'm going to be adding, and all of these numbers. Boom. Now what you should be thinking is, hey, all I need to do now is 120,800 divided by 522, because that's exactly what those numbers are. And in fact, that's completely accurate. So equals this number divided by this number, and you find that your mean is approximately 231.47. So this is your number for your mean. All right, now in order to get your standard deviation, it's a little bit more complicated, but not much more. So This is your formula for it. It's in red. What you should be thinking here is, hey, I'm going to be adding up a bunch of things that look like this in parentheses. And I'm going to be adding up a bunch of things that look like fi. Hey, we've done that one before. So this is where I'm using this table. And notice I've just copied over all of our information from the sample, or from your table that you had, the class, the midpoint, and your frequency. Now that we have x bar, so x bar, remember, stands for your mean. So in this case, what I could put is 231 point, maybe 42. You know, usually I think 231 would also be accurate, but I'm just going to do 2 decimal places. I'm going to put that wherever I see x bar. So this column just represents your mean, and that is this thing right here. Now, what are we doing to the mean? Well, we're kind of wanting to take our observation, xi, and subtract the mean from it. So I'm wanting to, excuse me, my midpoint. I'm wanting to take my midpoint, 100, and subtract away my mean. Gives me negative 131.42. I want to do that for each of these columns. So notice I'm taking 1,300, I'm taking 231.42 away from it to get 1,068.58. That takes care of the inside of this set of parentheses. What am I wanting to do with that inside of parentheses? Well, I'm wanting to square it. So I hit equals, click on the cell I care about, and boom, I want to square that sucker. So the square of negative 131.42 is this nasty number, and we're wanting to square everything, and you're going to get a huge number down here. Okay, now I've taken care of this guy squared, and notice how I'm going from the inside out. It's kind of like an onion. It has layers. I'm going to take this number right here, and I'm wanting to multiply it by all things that look like fi. So equals this number, which stands for this whole thing, and I'm going to times it by fi, which I've conveniently listed right here. Enter. I'm wanting to do that for every single one of these. So notice when I do this crazy number times 1, I just get it back. Or this number times 7, I'll get this big number right here. Now we're ready to roll. So ultimately, this column over here stands for my numbers up top. This big capital sigma tells me to add everything together. So that's what I'm going to do. Equals sum, whoopsies, no star, of all of these things. Enter. So great, now I've added this whole column together. The denominator says, wait a second, you also have to add all the fi's together. And notice that's just getting my total number of observations. My frequencies, if I add them all together, I just get the total number of observations here. So that's all I'm doing. That 522 will fill in this little bubble right here. So let me go ahead and fill it in with the numbers I know so far. That way we're knowing where they're going. So up top, I'm going to have 2606475.0.96. Yeah, that's a nice little number, isn't it? And I'm going to divide it by 522 minus 1. So ultimately what I'm going to be doing is, well, you just do 522 minus 1 real quick, and that's just according to the formula. You're going to be dividing by 521. So if I wanted to do this in Excel, I'll say equals this number divided by parentheses 521, or you could have said 522 minus 1. That gives me that the inside of the square root is 50,028.31278, blah, blah, blah. Last step, square root it, equals SQRT, click on the number I care about, hit enter, and you say, okay, my standard deviation is going to be 223.67. And that right there is my final answer. So use these tables. That's the biggest thing I can say. Start from left to right and just kind of calculate out each step.